Have you ever asked yourself, why do I abandon myself at critical moments in my relationship? Well, if you do, then this video is for you. We're going to talk about self-abandonment, and by the end of this video, you're going to learn three things. One, why it happens. Two, what it looks like in your relationship. And number three, most importantly, some steps you can take to stay grounded in your own sense of self. Hi, my name's Tom Philp, and I'm a trauma-informed coach. I've been working for years with adults who struggle with relational or attachment trauma to regain trust in themselves and others so that they can experience a safe and secure relationship. Okay, let's start here. Why does self-abandonment happen in the first place? Typically, it is rooted in our early childhood or past traumatic environments where we felt rejected, abandoned, or felt unsafe by those primary caretakers or primary partners that were really supposed to keep us safe in the first place. And what happens is our body learned how to adapt. We are built for flexibility. We're built for adaptation. And as I've said many times on my podcast and even this channel, we are built for protection as much as we are built for connection. So your body learned how to adapt to that particular environment. And it did so by giving up its own wants and needs and focusing on the wants and needs of others. And so when we get up to adulthood and we get into adult relationships, then your body's just doing what it knows to do, what it learned in its primary relationships. But it usually comes about because it was in and born in an environment where our needs were often unmet. So being able to understand sort of how this part of you was formed and why this part of you can get activated at certain times where you end up completely giving up yourself and you focus or overly focus on the needs of others. So the fact that you focus on others isn't a bad thing in and of itself. But the problem is connection with others comes at the cost of connection with ourself. And that's what a self-abandonment really does, is it devalues our own wants, our own needs in moments where we end up giving up ourselves and focusing on somebody else, whether it's our kids or whether it's our partner or whether it's our friends, or maybe we give way more than what's expected at work because that's a nice distraction, and it doesn't mean we have to sit with this deep feeling of abandoning ourselves. Whatever environment that looks like, it comes at the cost of self-alienation. One of the ways that we can recognize if we're falling into self-abandonment or if we catch ourselves in that moment is to recognize certain signposts that I think are really important. One of the first ones is, what sort of cue is your body giving you? With trauma survivors, being able to get in touch and be embodied, being able to understand those emotions that come up are absolutely important in terms of post-traumatic growth. Because if we're not able to recognize what our body's telling us, then we can't see that as a signpost to some greater need. And that's what's so paramount about our feelings. We don't just have feelings for the sake of having feelings. We have feelings because they're a signpost to something deeper, some greater need within ourselves. So one of the first things we can do is begin to recognize, what is my body telling me in this moment? Do I feel super anxious, or do I feel totally numb and shut down? If so, that might be a moment where you're beginning to abandon your own sense of self. If you find yourself wanting to say yes or wanting to say no, and you say the opposite, that's another realization that in this moment, I might be abandoning myself. Because oftentimes what will happen is you will do things to please others at the expense of your own sense of self. So being able to recognize these few moments, even though they might be fleeting at times, might be able to capture for you what's happening in that moment, so you can really begin to see, oh, this might be one of those times where I'm abandoning my own wants and my own needs. I might be protecting my own feelings or moving against my own best interest. I might be saying yes when I really want to say no, or say no when I really want to say yes. And instead what I'm doing is I'm losing that connection with myself, and instead I'm focusing on the connection or trying to avoid somebody else being disappointed. A couple of other ways you might begin to be able to recognize this. The first one is if you feel resentment building towards others. This oftentimes accompanies self-abandonment. We begin to feel like we give and give and give to everybody else, but nobody's pouring back into us. We haven't cultivated the relationships we need so that we can actually have somebody focus in on us, pour into us, be there for us, attuned to us. But instead, we feel like we're constantly doing that for others. And that can create some real resentment in our relationships, whether that's with our partner, or maybe it's with a best friend, or maybe it's even with our children sometimes. Children have lots and lots of needs when they're very young, and they have no way of regulating those needs for themselves until they get older. So it is common as parents for us to feel like sometimes we can be completely drained because we do nothing but give all day long. Finding ways to actually replenish and restore by having relationships that others can pour into us is crucial towards that. And finally, another signpost that might help you determine whether you're abandoning yourself is if you find that you're looking for validation externally constantly. In other words, you're looking outside yourself to everybody or everything else that might tell you you're good enough and that you measure up. Ultimately, a post-traumatic growth occurs when we can stay anchored in who we are and learn that we measure up, that we are good enough without always needing external validation. Now, I'm not saying we don't need external validation. That's part of the human condition. We need people to pat us on the back. We need a job well done every now and then. We need to hear, I love you, I like who you are, I love spending time with you from our partner. These things are important to us. But when we're consistently and constantly looking outside of ourselves for that kind of validation, it can really drain the battery and we can quickly abandon ourselves more and more often in our relationships. Okay, so what can we do to help not abandon ourselves and overcome this self-abandonment? Well, one of the first things I think we can do is be able to just check in with our body. This is something I mention a lot because it is so crucial to be embodied when we're working our way through trauma. Part of what trauma does is it disconnects us from our body. It disconnects us from our feelings so that we more often than not stay in a protective, defensive role and on this sort of heightened alert, and we don't ever feel safe in our own body. We don't ever feel that sense of trust in what we know and what we feel. So being able to check in with your body and notice the cues or the times where we feel like we might be abandoning ourselves that we just talked about a few minutes ago in this video, those signs that might be pointing towards that, we want to make sure that we're able to recognize those. I think something else that's really important to be able to do is oftentimes we've learned to abandon ourselves when we were young. We learned to focus more on other people because that maintained the connection or it maintained a sense of safety at the expense of ourselves. And so oftentimes that inner child can be stuck at a certain age where it had to lose itself in order to be able to maintain the external connection with a parent or somebody else. And so sometimes we need to be able to reparent that child. We need to be able to let that child know that it's okay. This part of you is safe right now, that the adult part of you can show up, that it can be there for that child, that it can really see that child and that childlike part, because no longer will it feel like it's being abandoned or rejected even by yourself. Okay, the final one I want to mention that I think is really important is being able to find and cultivate certain relationships that can be poured into you. Who is somebody in your life? And if you can't answer this question, then I really encourage you to figure out how and who might be able to do this for you. But everybody needs relationships that pour into them. If you're finding yourself in a place where all of your relationships, you're having to give and give and give, and it doesn't feel like you're getting anything back, then it's really important to find somebody, and if you have somebody, to reach out to them and let them pour into you a little bit. It's crucial to have safe relationships in our life, because when we do, when we can show up and we don't have to abandon ourselves and we can be who we need to be and we feel loved and seen and accepted by somebody else, this recharges our batteries. This sets things back to right. This creates a sense of groundedness and clearness and connection with ourself. And so the last thing I would say is I really encourage you to be able to find those relationships that are safe for you so that you can rebuild this sense of internal trust in yourself and you don't have to continually abandon yourself. Thank you so much for watching. If you want a longer version of this, you can go to our podcast, Trauma-Free Relationship, wherever it is you stream your podcast from. I give many other examples, and it's about 20-25 minutes longer than these videos are. So feel free to go and experience a longer version of this very same topic. My name is Tom Philp, and I'm here to remind you to stay grounded, clear, and connected.